This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Good evening. Welcome to our final session of workshops for 22-23 budget. Laura Jean, if you'd like to take us through the registrar's presentation.
Sure. This is probably the simplest one you're dealing with, but all I'm asking for is a 2% increase on the salary line, just to keep in line with bringing the salaries up like what Mike and I talked about last year. All of our other line items should be fine. We're pretty conservative with what we have to do, but there might be some additional costs to paper and printing because of when we go to order our ballots for this year, and the maintenance on the tabulators may go up slightly. As many of you know, our stuff is pretty antiquated. So for this year, we should be pretty good, but I just wanted to throw out that this board is going to have to be aware of the fact that in the future, possibly even as early as next year, we may have some huge increases in expenses because we're looking at new equipment. The state may or may not pay for it. If they don't, it could be $30,000 to $40,000 to replace all of our voting tabulators and machines that we use. So.
And that, you think that's going to fall in the 23-24 budget cycle?
Yeah, or later. I mean,
Okay.
We're hoping it comes up sooner rather than later, because right now there's not even equipment to repair some of the machines that we have. So people around the state are borrowing from one another for parts and stuff to do that. We're in good shape right now because we were redistricted, so we actually have one less district to worry about putting machines out for this year anyway. So.
Right. Tim made a good point.
5-year capital plan, Laura Jean?
I don't see it there.
I'm sorry.
Is the 30,000 your 5-year capital plan?
Yes.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing them listed in the 5-year capital.
I didn't actually provide one because we haven't been given all that information yet, but I can tell you after having attended some state conferences that is what we're looking at going down the road. And it will be across the state for everybody to have the same equipment. It's just that we don't know if the Secretary of State's office will pay for it like they did in the past.
You don't see it?
I don't see it.
We should probably try and get the 5-year capital plan.
Okay.
All right.
Who knows? It could be ARPA eligible.
It might be. It's a good point. 30,000, Laura Jean?
30 to 40,000. Obviously, I try to keep it lower if we can, but
Okay.
that is something that we need to be aware of.
All right.
going
And we think
forward.
it's 2 years out, or next
Could
year?
be next year.
Yeah, so you're going to add
I
that
would
to,
have loved it for this year, but there's no equipment out there.
you're going to add that line to the 5-year
They
plan?
have the new equipment, they just haven't, the state hasn't decided if that's what they're gonna go for at this point. So.
Okay. Any questions for Laura Jean?
Are her positions listed in the personnel section of our budget?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's the only thing that's,
I see it, yeah, election two registrars, okay.
no, that's all, that's it. That's all them. There is nobody
Just the
else,
two of us, yeah.
Just two.
except when they bring the outside people in during the vote. That's the only people involved.
Right.
Any other questions for Laura Jean?
Machines operable now?
I'm sorry.
The machine's operable now?
Yes. For what we have, we do have one we will not use again, but we are okay because of the fact that we were redistricted. So.
Where did we lose a polling place?
District 3 is now only 334. It's not 311 anymore after the.
Oh, okay, because, gotcha, gotcha.
Right.
We're good?
Just one question. This has
Sure.
nothing to do with finance. Do you want me to go through with the door downstairs? Do you need that?
You know, Mike, if you had asked me that 6 to 8 months ago, I would have said absolutely with the crazy things that were happening around here security-wise. Right now, we're fine with what we have. We have that tape that goes across.
All right.
It is like a $3,500 expense. I don't know if that's really what we want to do.
If you and Jim recommend it, I'll do it, okay? Just talk to
Okay.
Jim and let me know, okay?
Okay, okay.
I just have
You have
a
a
quick
question?
question, and again, we might have discussed this last year, but the dues and expenses went up pretty substantially last year, and I'm just wondering, is that something that we should expect for the future, and what was sort of behind that?
Yep. It will go up. It's, you know, our conferences are back up and running again this year, and that's where a lot of the expenses went for.
So you were able to, you think you'll be able to attend in person, or they're all virtual?
No, they're going to be in person, yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, our fall one was in person, and the spring one will be in person, as will the fall this year.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Everyone's good? Thank you, Laura Jean. Mr. Johns?
So that's that. Assessor.
Good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Mine is primarily the same. The only line that I did ask for an increase was the grand list books, printing and maps, for an additional $2,000 to match basically what our actual expenses were for that period. But the other issue that when we prepared this budget, we didn't know, and Stacy's in the same situation, that our quality data service has just informed us that there's going to be a price increase for the upcoming year of 5%. So that, that's I can absorb that within the rest of the lines. I'm not concerned about that, but just to let you know.
And which line are you?
QDS.
QDS.
QDS, yeah.
Okay.
Because I believe I consistently underspend my budget, so I think I can handle that.
Any questions for the assessor?
Hey, Gary, do we still accrue for the cost of the fiscal reval? Is that what the professional appraisal line is?
No,
It didn't work?
that accrual is done off in a separate fund.
Right.
It's not in my budget.
Okay.
This professional appraisal services is primarily for tax appeals,
Okay.
using professional appraisers when necessary.
What were you saying?
No, it is. We used to carry a separate, I don't know if we carried it in finance or we carried it in capital.
Yeah, separate line item.
No, listen,
We did carry it. It was like 70,000 a year. That's not here, not in his budget.
No.
Okay.
And
Gary, go over again, what was the reason for the price increase on the maps?
that was just actual use, to the 4,000, from 2,000 to 4,000.
Yes.
That's just I spent 3,900 last year,
Oh, so it's just a
So-
little overdue. Okay,
just to reflect the actual.
yes, thank you.
But, there's a couple overlapping items here, like bookbinding field cards. I underspent that dramatically last year, so I had a 5,000 budget and I only spent less than 500. So there's some wiggle room between the lines here, but it's significant. It's not large amounts of money in any case.
So I guess that begs the question, why budget it at 5,000?
Because in the past it has.
Oh.
We have had that. It depends on what we're doing. If we're actually bookbinding for field cards
Uh-huh.
or not. And I don't do them every year, so.
Right.
So it's hard to.
So are you able to gauge, what you'll be doing as far as,
Yeah,
cards
more
or not
less,
cards for
more
the
or
next
less.
year?
We'll
So,
do them again next year.
uh-huh.
And so I don't know what that cost will be.
I see, okay, so it's kind of every other year
Yeah.
type thing? Okay,
I like to do them every year, but sometimes I miss a year.
okay, got it.
Anything else for the assessor?
Are we going to get the grand list printout? Big, long list?
That is,
We have it. It shows about a 3% increase in the grand list this year.
Okay,
It's going to yield about $2.9 million in incremental revenue. And largely because of housing growth, developments that we've worked with developers on bringing new houses in, specifically over at Pierpont Hill. There's been an increase in industrial property. The Amazon tax incentive, as it phases out, continues to yield incremental dollars in terms of what, not only from the tax incentive standpoint, but also just the overall values there. And, and this is not necessarily a good thing, but all over the state, all the municipalities are going to be faced with a portion of the grand list growth due to car values going up because of what's happening in the car market. So,
Try and buy a used car.
that's huge, and it's happening everywhere in the state, and experiencing like a 20% increase due to just the values of the used cars going up.
When did it get updated, Gary? When did the car values get updated?
Every year.
So that happens, what, before the
We value them
October?
before, like right now, we get the lists
Yeah.
in November. We value them all, so we can close them in January, so it doesn't, once a year. The values are always based on October 1st of that
Right.
grand list year,
And that goes out, what, August?
July.
Yeah.
And, but there will be a lot of people that are unhappy with their motor vehicle bills this year because we are required to use J.D. Power as our valuation source. And that's every town in the state, so everybody's going to experience the same kind of change.
One final point on this, the state's trying to enact some legislature to cap the mill rate for cars at 29. Now, in cities like Hartford, where there's a 77 mill rate, that is a huge advantage for the residents. Now, the state, their plan would be to reimburse the municipalities for the millions and millions of dollars that are lost by putting a 29 mill rate in. For us, because our mill rate is among the lowest, that it's not that much of a difference between the 29 and the 30.42 or 30.46 we're at right now. So it's not as big of an impact for our residents as it would be, let's say, in the city of Hartford or New Haven.
Hamlin.
And Hampton, right.
Anything else for the assessor?
Well, the only thing, Board of Assessment Appeals, I also
Oh,
have.
that's right.
And that's, I reduced, it's the same, except I reduced the personnel budget because of as we go through the revow cycle, we get fewer and fewer appeals, and that just reflects that fewer hours that the board will have to put in for those appeals.
Anything else for the assessor?
Just at this time, I normally make the request to the finance director to receive the full spreadsheet on for the grand list.
Yes.
And all the changes and all the categories with all the exceptions and exemptions and everything else.
We just have it, we just got it, so we have it.
So, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
It's in the mail.
Well, good. Thank you, Gary.
Tammy, we'll make a note of that too, okay?
Stacy?
Good evening. I have both the town clerk and tax collector budgets to present. You've been provided all that information in advance, and the only changes that I have are, as Gary Johns noted, we received late notice just like a couple of days ago from the vendor with regard to the postage line item for the tax office. But I had already estimated basically what they're saying the increase would be, so I don't think there'll be any issue.
Okay. Would you like to take us through the rest? Which one do you want to start with first?
Unless you have any questions, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. You want to start with town clerk?
Town clerk side, the only thing I'm going to suggest is that with the unknowns out there, and I'll reiterate, the registrar voter, Lord Jean Hannon, the issue with the voting machines is precarious at this point and a huge unknown. So that is definitely something to be on the lookout for. And taking that into consideration, I'm not sure what's going to happen with this governor race and how COVID may or may not affect it, but I have requested a small little increase for absentee balloting. It may end up being a little more than that, but again, I have no idea at this point. But otherwise, things are looking basically the same.
Stace, what's the item at the top of page 2, please?
I'm sorry?
What's the item at the top of page 2, please?
Page 2 of what? Page 2 of what? I've submitted so much.
You gave us this memorandum here.
Which one? I did another one as well. Which date?
December 6th?
The 6th, page 2. Oh, records management. So when it comes to the town clerk's budget, there's a portion, it used to be $1, it used to be called the dollar fund, but now it's actually $2 since legislation changed in the past. It can't be part of the general fund. It actually has to be its own separate account that I, as town clerk, use for specific purposes laid out by the statute. About I'm gonna say 7, 8 years ago, Ed Swinkowski had decided that he wanted to show it in the budget this way. So he puts it in and he takes it out, since it's not part of the not part of the general fund, it's part of its own separate account.
It's a
But
special fund.
he wanted to
Is this
show
an
it.
expense?
No.
It's not technically, because it's not coming out of the general fund. But because of COVID, I haven't utilized it for the last few years.
I can't say I follow, you point out.
Okay, there's an account that's set up, should be set up separate and apart from the general fund. And for every transaction that takes place in the land records, $2 now goes to that account and is reserved for the town clerk's use. I don't know what that is currently, what the balance is. I haven't used it in a couple of years. I'll be honest, I've requested numerous times in many, many years how much is in that account, but I've never been provided that information.
Okay, so this is an income item anyway.
Yes.
So
And
the
What's the
compromise,
restrictions on the account?
excuse me?
What was the restrictions? What could
There's
be
a
used
whole
for?
lot of them, but the point being is that instead of the balancing of the account being provided to me, the compromise was this $15,000 line item that was in and out of the town clerk's budget each year for the last few years. I can get you the statutory information if you're
No,
interested.
I wasn't clear if it was an expense or income. I got it. It's an income item, and it's been limited to 15,000.
Well, technically you can't limit, but that's just been
And
done,
that's sort of weird to have with that, it sounds like.
well, no, that's what I was told it was gonna be.
All right, either way, it's an income item. It's funded by filings in the town, and it has some restrictions on what can be spent on.
Yeah, that's correct. Other than that, I don't really have any other items, unless somebody has a question.
Yeah, I don't see many changes. Part-time and, part-time number went up.
Yes, but unfortunately, I've not been able,
Personnel, or is that dollars and cents only?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you
Is
said.
that an increase in personnel?
No,
Or just increase in dollars?
both. Well, okay. So for a very long time, I did not have a part-timer in my town clerk's office, nor in my tax office. And I still don't have anyone in my tax office. I've had someone I finally hired in the town clerk's office a month ago. So you're gonna actually see that line item getting used, and the amount per hour is different for the new hire.
Sure.
We could not get anyone at $15 an hour, so I authorized Stacy to go up between $18 and $20 an hour.
Unfortunately, it's been the case, and I'm not the only person saying this, it was more lucrative for people to stay home and collect as opposed to working. And I haven't been able to get anyone in, and finally I have a lovely new person working for me in town clerk's office, so I'm fully staffed there, still frantically searching for someone in tax. Just spread the word. I need somebody part-time.
I didn't notice. Did you have anything in capital? You didn't have any capital?
No,
request?
no.
Anyone have any questions for Stacy?
Well, this fund that we don't know what the restrictions on, why don't we look at what the restrictions are? I mean, if it's income,
No, it can't.
It can't go in the general fund.
From what I mean, we've talked about this in the past. It can't clear through the general fund, it has to be separate. He does have jurisdiction over the fund. There were some quirky restrictions, I just don't remember them all.
Well,
Yeah.
we're going to cap for next month. If it's a special fund, it's going to be in there with the restrictions.
Yeah, we'll look at it in the capital.
I can,
Give us a just rough synopsis. What kind of items can you use it for?
anything to do, basically, land records, archival projects, equipment, non-equipment, it's restrictive on the type of equipment in the offices. It's only in the town clerk, it's not tax. I can't use those monies in tax.
So we can
It's
use it.
specifically laid out, I mean, I could get the statute
Sure,
for you.
sure.
We don't even know how much is in the fund. I'll find out.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have no idea.
We'll find out.
we have money, we're not using it because there's so many restrictions, so.
No, that's
I mean,
not,
Or
there's,
authorized to.
and we can see it in the cap, there's a lot of special funds. There's a special fund that was left that can only be used, the people that left the money in their will or whatever, put some tight restrictions on what it can and cannot be used for, or it can only be used for this at the library, it can only be used this, and
All right, so we'll look.
We'll look into it, we'll find out what the number is, and maybe Stacy, we can find a way to maybe archive some records.
Sure, absolutely, if we can hire some more people to do that.
Yeah.
I currently,
Well, maybe we can.
I currently run 2 offices plus a bunch of other stuff in town hall, and
Maybe we can.
can't seem to get anybody in here to do it. I would love it, though. It'll be wonderful. I'm overwhelmed.
Any other questions for Stacy?
Yeah, I had a couple quick questions. Stacy, you go into great detail about wanting to, divide your increase in your salary between your 2 roles, and I'm just curious as to which of your 2 roles actually takes more of your time?
They are equal. It's like having twins. You can't choose between the 2 of them.
Oh, no, I'm not asking you to choose. I'm just saying which actually,
It depends on
I'm
the-
sure it's seasonal.
Yeah, it's definitely seasonal.
Of course, it's seasonal in terms of tax collection, I just wondered, but you also do back taxes, but in terms of your role as town clerk, I'm sure that is just year-round, right?
Yeah, you name it, I do it.
Yeah, and so
Death,
I just
birth,
wondered about
Real
that.
estate, marriage, election.
But,
So it is definitely cyclical and seasonal. I mean, it depends on what's going on. It's all over the place when it comes to where I am and what I'm doing at any particular time. So I really couldn't nail it down for you with too many specifics, but I could give you a broad idea,
right,
like what I'm doing right at this moment.
right, well,
Yeah.
I mean, certainly you're responsible, you have lots of responsibilities as town clerk. that-
Stacy even swears this in, because I know, I remember that, because it's the only time in my life where I ever said the words, "I do."
And it was to me.
Tragic, that is tragic. That is
On
tragic.
that note, does anyone have anything else for Stacy? Because I really want to stop Mike Elliott from talking about and saying I do.
I did.
He'll start singing soon.
It's all right, we're good.
Any other questions? Thank you, Stacy.
Absolutely, thank you.
Chief?
Very good. Keep collecting that money.
Am I still on? Sorry. Evening, Chief.
Good evening.
Would you like to take us through your proposal?
I would love to. If everyone can reference page 26 in the packet. Before I start at the top, I'd just like to note that there were a few miscommunications as we transitioned with the finance department. A few things were misunderstood. So as we go through this budget, we'll make some adjustments. The good news is, all the numbers are going to be lower than what you have in front of you. So to begin with the first line, full-time personnel, we're requesting 3 additional police officers for next fiscal year. In North Haven, we're seeing what's consistent with the region, the state, what everyone sees across the country. That's an increase in crime and total calls for service. Last year in North Haven, we had 2 murders. To give some perspective, the last time there was a murder in North Haven was 2011. I have some local statistics that I came up with to shed some light on the crime and the calls for service, as well as the FBI's published stats. So I compared our 2021 stats with an average of the last 5 years worth of statistics to avoid some outliers in different categories. Last year, we had 27% more calls for service. So that's every incident that we respond to, whether we send 1 officer or 10 officers. It's considered 1 specific call for service. So 27% more, which is substantial. For stolen vehicles and shopliftings, they were up 40%. Theft of parts of vehicles, catalytic converters, wheels from dealerships, those were up by 45%. And overdoses were up by 20%, which is troubling for a number of reasons. The past 5 years, or the previous 5 years, those numbers were already trending high with comparable towns. So to have a 20% increase last year is very troubling. The FBI recently published their first quarter and second quarter comparisons of crime, comparing 2021 to 2020. In the category of all offenses, so this is every category of crime, North Haven is up 18.4%. And crimes against persons is up 17.1%. So those are your violent crimes, your robberies, assaults, carjackings, etc. So that line item, I think it'd be appropriate for the specific numbers to come from the board, from the finance department, but they will be substantially less than what you see here. But it is an additional 3 police officers we're requesting.
Okay.
The next line down with an increase or an adjustment is we are requesting $45,000 additional for our school resource officer line. What that is money to fund a supernumerary school resource officer position. So we currently have 6 supernumerary school resource officers that work in the public schools in North Haven. These are retired police officers, but are still certified and highly trained. It's a cost-effective way to add security in our school, protecting our staff and our students. We currently have 6 of those. In addition to that, we have a full-time police position at the police department, and that person is assigned as a school resource officer at the high school. What I'd like to do is retain that position back to the police department and fund this supernumerary school resource officer with that $45,000. So again, it's a lower pay wage rate. It's the lowest rate of any patrolman. It's a grade D wage, and we do not pay any fringe benefits. So it's a cost-effective way to continue to provide the services to the Board of Education in terms of safety and protection, but also add value at the police department.
So you're gonna swap out the high school with a supernumerary
Instead of our full-time police officer.
So was this one of the 3, Chief?
No.
No.
No, it's an addition.
Just an addition.
So the 3 additional police officers, we want to focus in our uniform services division, increase the presence of police in neighborhoods and business districts in marked police cars. The individual or the position that we'd want to pull back from the school, we want to focus that position on juvenile law and juvenile justice in general. This would be a liaison with our juvenile court system, the prosecutors and investigators there. They would play a bigger role in our juvenile review board to ensure that the lower level crimes are taken care of at the local level instead of sending our juveniles into the juvenile justice system.
Chief, just so I understand, so is there currently an SRO and a supernumerary at the high school?
There is.
So we would have 2 supernumeraries at the high school?
Correct. And the reason why we added a second SRO at the high school was at the request of the Board of Education because of the size of the school, 3 floors, it's very spread out, the number of student population as well as staff is difficult for one school resource officer to cover everything.
Are they dressed as in uniform, and do they carry a gun?
Yes, they're certified on-duty police officers. They wear a different uniform than what you see up here. It's a softer approach, a polo shirt, but they have a badge with their name on the shirt, but they do carry a full duty belt. And it's been a very successful program. We've heard nothing but positive things from it.
The public loves it. The parents, teachers, and faculty are so thrilled with this program.
I didn't realize it carried a full duty belt.
So I have a quick question about that, Chief,
Sure.
That question was asked.
about the supernumeraries. Again, I'm a bit of a stickler for this particular terminology because we did vote at a town meeting, and there is language that refers to the supernumeraries as a distinct category than the SROs, and you pointed out the distinctions. So I just like to just clarify for those listening at home that the supernumeraries are in fact retired police officers. They are not unionized and they are paid on an hourly basis only if the school is actually open, whereas the school resource officer, as was pointed out, is actually a sworn police officer, a patrolman. And so I had the same thought that you had, Jim, that perhaps if we were swapping one out, that maybe that would reduce the total numbers. But the question that I have is, do the supernumeraries actually have the ability do they have arresting authority?
Yes.
That's the benefit of the program that we have in North Haven. I believe it was the first program, and may still be the only program in this state, where, for example, our neighboring town, North Branford, shortly after Sandy Hook, instituted a program where they had retired police officers who were completely retired, and then they became armed security guards in the schools. Mm-hmm. What we did was create a program where these retired police officers stay certified, which means that they continue with the high level of training that we provide all of our officers. So they have full arrest powers, they are certified, sworn, on-duty police officers.
Because I thought, and again, it might have changed since it was initially memorialized at a town meeting, but I thought that was one of the specific things that was actually eliminated from the language, was that they did not have arresting authority, and that might have changed, but I thought that was the case. Does anyone know?
The arresting authority comes through their certification with the state of Connecticut and Post Council, which Mr. Frieda sits on. Maybe what you're referring to is our general order, not the ordinance.
Our ordinance.
Where they're not there to discipline or arrest children. That's not their intent. Their intent is to protect the children and the staff, interact with them, build relationships. So
Right.
maybe that's what you're referring to. But they do have the authority to make.
So they have the authority, but according to our ordinance, they're not supposed to be doing that within the school system? Is that the
I think ordinance is
subtlety?
the wrong word, but the policy is that they don't perform arrests, I guess, unless it's something that's significant.
Okay. And although it's not paid for by the police department, the high school does also have a security guard, isn't that correct?
They do have unarmed security guards.
Is it just one or two?
I don't know.
Two.
Two. Okay, so there's 2 security guards, and you're proposing 2 supernumeraries just at the high school?
There's currently, and there has been for several years now, 2 sworn police officers who act as school resource officers at the high school. We just want to pull back the full-time sworn police officer who, with fringe benefits and salary, costs the town about $120,000 per year. We want to use that position at the police department instead of at the school. We want to use a $45,000 funded supernumerary SRO to be the second SRO at
I
the
see.
school.
And is there an SRO in every school?
There is.
Yes.
Chief, you like to continue?
Sure.
Every school.
So we're kind of splitting
This
hairs.
is the point.
A school
This is
resource
the whole
officer,
point.
a school resource officer is a,
Full-time patrol.
no,
No.
it's a certified police officer assigned in a school environment. We have 6 supernumeraries who are assigned to schools as school resource officers.
Right.
We currently have 1 full-time police officer who's not a supernumerary
Right.
assigned to a school as a school resource officer.
Right.
So
It
it's
just
interchangeable.
confuses things to say supernumerary SRO. If you just said supernumerary, that's very clear. If you say SRO, that refers to a full-time police officer who happens to be assigned to the school system. That's my only point.
Just said no.
We have supernumeraries who are not SROs, so they're all interchangeable. So that's where that confusion comes. Maybe the deputy chief and I can have a discussion on renaming and rebranding the program.
I see.
Moving on, the next line item is one of those that needs to be adjusted. This was just an assumption that was made that was incorrect. If you look at the left column on page 26, there's 2 overtime lines. One's overtime regular, one's overtime town projects. My request for total overtime is $735,395. Unfortunately, that was broken into 2 sections, and $60,000 was added. So we do not need the $60,000 in additional town project overtime. So that's not a 21% increase. It actually breaks down to a 9.9% increase overall. And I want to be clear about this. We're not requesting additional overtime hours. This has nothing to do with additional police officers.
Wage change.
Wage change, yeah. Anticipated wage change. As of July 1st, we anticipate 4 years' worth of wage increases
Totally reasonable.
with the contract potentially being ratified.
Okay.
The water line, Ms. Barrett, I'm sure you'll be happy that we're adjusting the water line.
Thank
I
goodness.
enjoy watching these meetings every month. There's a long version of why it wasn't adjusted in the past I won't bore you with, but the short version is we have 2 years' worth of water usage, and we can anticipate the cost, so that's being adjusted slightly.
Can you just explain, what is this fire pump? I guess that wasn't clear to me.
That's kind of the long version, but.
Oh, sorry.
I'll give it a shot.
I walked right into that one.
So we have a main meter, just like in every other building, every other home that has city water. As you would imagine, the sinks, the showers, the bathrooms, the water flows to that main water meter. And that usage went up slightly in the new building. There's more people working out in the fitness center, more showers being taken, but that was a slight increase. Because the water pressure to the building from the main on Lindsley Street was not high enough to support the fire suppression system, the fire marshal indicated we were forced to install this industrial-sized water pump. It's, like I said, industrial size. It takes up about 250 square feet in our basement. It has to be maintained professionally 4 times a year, and that goes to water. As you can imagine, the water has to purge from time to time. So that's a separate meter. The first meter is billed in accordance with what we're all used to with city water, quarterly, so we were able to anticipate those charges. The second meter is billed twice per year, December and June. So when we were presenting the current fiscal year budget, when we were preparing that budget, it was in November of 2020. So we weren't issued that second meter bill at the time, so we did not anticipate that. We were going off the current cost of that first meter, if that makes sense. So that's why it took so long. So it's a very large pump that if there's a fire, it'll save everything.
Was that pump put in at our expense, the town's expense?
That was part of the building project.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm requesting an additional $2,500 in the K-9 food and maintenance line. In the past, and for a very long time, we maintained 2 police K-9s. One was a German Shepherd, the other was a Labrador that was narcotics only. When the Labrador was retired, we replaced her with a German Shepherd. Both are patrol certified. One is narcotics certified. The second will be narcotics certified shortly. We get more bang for the buck for having German Shepherds because we can cross-train them, but it costs a little bit more to maintain them. It's much more expensive for the food. The vet bills come more often because they're much more athletic, as you can imagine, and the training equipment is more expensive. And the final request on page 26 is an additional $3,000 in the TASER body camera and data storage line. This is a 5-year contract. We're currently in year number 1, which costs $66,000 for the entire package. Years 2 through 5 will be $69,000 for the remainder of the contract.
Now, do we save all, since this program started with the cameras, do we have all of it, or does it roll up? So it continually, so we're storing everything?
We have everything.
Okay.
We have the option to have it roll off, but we pay for the unlimited storage, so we keep everything.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No, was this a lease, Chief?
It is not. It's a finance package.
Do they become obsolete?
They do. So what's included in this is the hardware for the actual body camera itself, the mounting brackets, the ports that we can upload the video and the metadata at the police department, as well as less lethal taser, the actual electronic weapon, the holsters, and the unlimited cloud storage.
I guess I'm not sure exactly what a finance package, but I'm wondering if this can go into nursing. I mean, maybe not the storage, because that's obviously some film that's being stored somewhere, right? I don't know. Maybe the cameras. It's not the guns, I guess.
It is.
It's the guns and the body camera.
That's right.
Right.
And at the 2.5-year mark, we get all new hardware, the cameras as well as the tasers.
Is that something that could go in capital requests?
No. What that is right now?
It's equipment, right?
But it's equipment, it's done.
It's much more than equipment. The cloud storage is really the most expensive part of it. It manages our video, the metadata. It allows us to transmit electronically to the court system. That's really the most expensive part of the whole thing. So with the personnel full-time line being adjusted, as well as the overtime line being adjusted, that 11% in the bottom right is not accurate. It's closer to 7%, but like I mentioned earlier, the finance department will get exact numbers to all of you. I have no increased requests for the animal control officer's budget, and I just have capital requests left.
Just out of curiosity, how do we stand in that building nowadays? Animal control?
It's not in terrible shape. It doesn't need to be replaced at this time. We've been investing slowly but surely in that facility, making improvements, replacing pumps, which go fairly often because of the nature of their business. Last year, or the year before, there was a capital approval for a new roof, new gutters, new fascia boards.
Okay.
So it's definitely not a brand-new building, but it doesn't need to be
it's in good
replaced.
shape. Capital?
Capital, 3 of the 4 items pertain to the police vehicles. As you see every year, we're requesting 3 new marked police vehicles at 135. The laptop computers that go in those 3 vehicles for $15,000 total, and the complete outfit of all the vehicles. This is stripping the vehicles that are being traded in, the installation of labor, all the equipment that's purchased for each vehicle. That's $45,000 or $15,000 per car. In addition to that, we are scheduled for replacement of 7 body armor units. That's all I have for capital.
Say, Chief, are you allowing yourself enough for these 3 cars? I mean, with the prices going up.
Yeah, this year worked out perfect. We actually made out better this year because of the trade-in value of the used cars. Compensated for the increase in the new cars. So I think we'll be fine.
Are we staying with the same type of car? Are you going back to these SUVs?
So this current
Are you
fiscal
staying-
year, we are purchasing a Chevy Tahoe and 2 of the same Ford Interceptors, the SUVs. So we're going to see how the Chevy Tahoe works out in patrol and make a determination. They're actually the same price as far as purchase.
Big cars.
I like when you went the SUVs, a little bigger, better visibility in the vehicle.
It's working out well so far for us.
So I have a question. So we're still using laptops, not like iPads or whatever, just a general question.
Yeah, so they're technically a monitor that's separate from the keyboard. We transitioned to a new company this past year. We refer.
To the laptop, so it kind of is,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Just
They're
curious.
still old school. They still think old school.
I
in
know,
certain
well.
regards.
But we had enough trouble with the supernumerary SRO terminology. So I don't want to change the laptop.
Can you imagine that? Right?
Chief, a quick question for you. How many cars are in your fleet currently that are operational?
I'd have to get back to the board with the exact number.
Well, we roll them over like every 3 years,
Yeah.
right?
So we have unmarked vehicles, we have admin vehicles, we have 2 K-9 cars, we have patrol vehicles, but we keep some of the older vehicles because
That we park and get money for.
when there's maintenance of the newer vehicles, somebody needs to drive something. We have vehicles to go out on road jobs for protection of construction crews and the flow of traffic. So there's a number of different categories when we refer to our fleet.
Yeah.
So I don't know off the top of my head the exact number.
Yeah, I've just been thinking about that this year because we frequently are getting requests for, this vehicle or that vehicle, and it's always good to have some index of, this is in addition to, X number that we currently have
So-
by category.
To that point, we would never increase the number of vehicles. without the
No,
board
no,
of
no,
finance
you're
approval.
selling
just-
older ones and turning them over, I understand.
Exactly.
And also, related to that, how frequently do you change the tires? I know you have a line item for tire replacement each year.
We have a traffic sergeant who does a great job managing the fleet. I could ask him how often he changes them. I don't know if he goes by miles.
Yeah, that was
hours
my
on
question. Is it based
I
on
just
miles or?
learned
Okay.
By miles, and more when you drive, if you're turning versus going straight, tires go quickly. I just learned that
Well,
lesson.
generally goes by the tire, Captain, how much.
It's,
Yeah,
it's
but
the
like-
type of tire, but
Type
also
of
whether
tire,
it's
but if you're doing
balanced,
highway
aligned, all
driving
of those
the time,
things.
You're not replacing your tires that often if you're doing, because I just had
No,
that.
but they can measure the tread depth, that's what they do.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
exactly what it is.
So we've recently, in the past few years, transitioned away from going from snow tires to all-weather tires. Well, now they're all-weather tires, so we don't swap them out. That saved us some costs, but X amount of miles per vehicle. Our traffic sergeant schedules maintenance with Public Works. There's safety checks that they do, as well as the oil and check the tires.
Anything else you'd like to tell us?
That's all I have.
Any questions for the chief?
Yes.
Yeah, Michael.
I have a quick question, unless anyone else wants to go ahead of me.
Michael started something, but go
Yes,
ahead.
please, go ahead. You have most seniority.
I do not discuss my age here at this
Oh,
meeting.
no, absolutely not.
The regular personnel contract with the patrolmen and so forth, that has not been settled yet, or it has been settled?
It has
It's
not been
close.
settled as
Not
of-
been, but it's close. And it will be 4 years, and next year will be the first year of it.
Not necessarily, right, that can't be right, right?
No, it expired
Must have expired, right,
in
right?
2019.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, retroactive. I'm sorry. Thank you for clarifying.
That's why that overtime is 9.9%. It's a conservative average of less than 2.5% per year increase.
Well, but that's not regular then, because we have reserve accrued for that, right?
Well, but he's just punching his number up.
Yeah, but he punched up, he said 10%.
Well,
Yeah,
we don't keep the money there.
that line will be reduced.
We don't keep the increase in their line.
Well, no, actually,
It's a separate line.
I know it's a separate line, but his line should only reflect the actual expenditure for next year, right?
Normally it would, he actually now projected, because they're so close to finalizing the contract, he took a shot, here's where it's really gonna be for 22, 23.
No, he said it was 9.9%, which reflects from the expiration to next year.
Yes.
So that's not the way we normally budget. We normally would only budget for the increase for next year.
So I was working with Mr. Swinkowski and his team. It was my understanding that the contractual obligations line, that's not in my budget, obviously,
Right,
will take care of not only retroactive
right.
pay, if that's the case, but
Right.
also the full-time personnel line if it's ratified within a fiscal year.
Yes, that's
That the
exactly.
overtime was not included with that contractual obligation, so I'm requesting it for this budget.
So the 9.9 is the overtime, not the regular increase.
Correct, just the overtime. Correct.
Okay. Yeah, my-
In other words, using the same amount of
Yeah.
overtime hours that we currently manage.
I misunderstood what you're saying too. Okay.
So my question would have been to Mr. Frieda, which I think was just answered, is that the contractual obligation line for escrowing estimates of future contracts, it does not include overtime. It only includes regular time for these unions?
The retros.
The retros.
Retroactives.
Yes.
So, and that's a number that I've got booked, and we're watching it very closely, and we're moving forward. Hopefully, in early March, the police will ratify or at least vote on the contract.
Okay. All right, then I hope we can get a breakdown then of, in that personnel full-time line between what is, well, right now, it's just the 3 additional officers, is that right?
Right, so.
There's no anticipated increase in that line for any
All the budgets
contract
like that.
settlement, right?
Every workshop we have, so.
Yes, okay, I'm sorry.
What you're going to see, and what you're going to see here, Kevin alluded to it, is that he mentioned earlier, he's bringing the 11% down to 7%. The miscommunication that Kevin was talking about was that the budget that you already have has 43 officers in it. The 40 includes the 3 that Kevin was looking for. So the impact, and Kevin alluded to it earlier, is that we're going to be saving money in the budget book that you already have. Not only the 11% going down to 7%, but when I run the Excel calculations on the other benefits associated with taking 3 officers out, the 43 to 40, you're going to see a total, shall we say, decrement of about $405,000 by making that adjustment, by correcting that miscommunication.
Yeah, a little more confused. All right.
I'll fill you in.
Okay. Since you'll fill me in. No, I'll ask the questions in March.
Tim, do you have anything?
No.
Guy? Jim?
All set.
Nancy?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. The 3 police officers that we approved, the additional officers a year ago, apparently,
Was it 2 or 3?
no, it was last year.
It was 3.
No, wasn't it 2 though?
Am I wrong? 3.
3.
I suggested 2, but we wound up approving 3. They were just brought in mid-year, correct? So they've only been in place for about a month or so?
They were budgeted for January.
Right, so they've only been in their position for about a month or so.
Was it 3?
Month and a half? Yeah, 2 months. So I guess the question is, we're just really starting with this increase from 37 to 40 patrolmen. And so I guess the question is, how is it that you can gauge that impact, meaning that increase in terms of increased safety for our community? And then, based upon that information, I assume we need at least 6 months, if not, a year's worth of information before you can then say, oh yes, we need 3 more on top of that.
Sure. So we actually need about 2.5 years before we could analyze any of that data. So with that half-year budgeted position, when it was approved in May of 2018, 21, it was approved to go in effect January 2022. The officers who were hired with that funding will be onboarded and on the road by themselves in January, February of 2023. So if this current request is approved, we would anticipate, if it's a July start for 3 new officers, that the following July or August, those 3 officers would be on the road making an impact. When Mr. Frieda and I had discussions in terms of the needs of the department, a year and a half ago, I suggested an additional 6 police officers. We talked about a balance between growing to getting to that size, to have 2 officers per shift, making that 6 mark in uniform services, balancing that between the budget increase year to year. I decided to request 3 for last year, which was cut down to a half-year approval, and then an additional 3 this year. So with 6 new officers, we're able to put 2 on day shift, for example, and we're not like most departments, other departments in town, where we have to be so strict with per shift X amount, and that X amount has to be the same. As you can imagine, at 3 o'clock in the morning, we don't need as many officers as we need at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're flexible. But for example, if we added 2 officers to our day shift, 2 to the evening shift, and 2 to the midnight shift, because of their overlapping schedules, at times that would increase our staffing by 1 person on the road, and at times that would increase the staffing to 2 people on the road. So that was our goal.
I see. Okay. And so, again, you cited several statistics for increased crime in the area. And I guess the real question is, a year ago, we were talking about carjackings and many car break-ins that seem to be perpetrated by minors. And that even though in many cases they're actually caught, they seem to be back out on the street in a day or 2. And so the real question is, would increased presence of police officers have any impact on that?
I think so, otherwise I'd be out of a job.
No, well,
So-
it's a very real question.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the presence of police officers is, number 1, a deterrent. It's also, when we think about crime, we think about how we could affect and deter crime. We also think about the fear of crime, which is just as important, sometimes more important than crime itself. So Mr. Frieda gets the same complaints I do, probably not as often as I do as it relates to the police department. But 90% of the complaints start off with people saying, the officers who work in North Haven are very professional, the service they provide is great, but we don't see them in our neighborhoods. We're afraid of all these carjackings, the stolen cars, the car break-ins. Why don't we have more officers driving through our neighborhoods? We have small business owners who say that they don't see the officers driving through their parking lots often enough. We have people who are concerned with speeding in targeted areas that want to see more police officers there. So it was explained to me when I was a rookie cop a long time ago that a very basic model of an officer's time allocation. If you look at a pie, there's only 3 pieces to it. One is calls for service, the other is the administrative aspect of policing, and then there's the patrol functions. So calls for service, as I demonstrated earlier, have skyrocketed. They've gone up, and they've consistently gone up. It's consistent the first 6 weeks of this year. It's consistent going farther back than last calendar year. The administrative aspect of policing has not only gone up because it's a direct correlation with the calls for service. You're talking about report writing, reporting to the state, filling out forms, the internal accreditation mandates that we have, the supervision. So for X amount of increased calls for service, we have X amount of increased administrative tasks that we have to do, but also because of things like the police accountability bill, increased statewide model policies, accreditation, and our standards, we've increased and added programs that added to the administrative function. So those first 2 pieces of the pie increase, the patrol function slice of the pie decreases, if that makes sense. So we want more visibility, that's all we hear. Give us more visibility, give us more police officers in the neighborhoods, give us more police officers in the business district. And different times of the year and different trends, we have the flexibility to change those patrol functions, but we need more bodies because we can't make that 3rd pie bigger. We can't add more time to the day, we can only add more staff. If that answers the question.
But if your thought is that you don't need as many patrolmen at night at 3 o'clock in the morning as you do at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but most of the carjackings, or car break-ins anyway, are occurring at 3 o'clock in the morning, then there seems to be a disconnect there.
So that was a really basic example of the distribution of personnel. Sometimes we would increase. We used about $35,000 in grant funding towards the end of last year for crime suppression, where we added extra patrols in the overnight hours. Sometimes we used unmarked vehicles, sometimes we used marked vehicles, so a deterrent opposed to trying to catch the crimes. So sometimes, depending on the trends, depending on times of year, we would increase. So maybe 3 or 4 of those additional officers would be on the evening shift, not the midnight shift. Sometimes it would be 2, 2, and 2. We constantly change the amount of officers we have on a specific shift.
Okay, thank you for explaining that, I appreciate it.
Anything else for the chief?
The last question I have is for Finance Director Frida. If the contract gets settled between now and, say, April, will you change the lines in the budget that go to the public to reflect the true personnel cost of the settlement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably March. I don't know if we'd have enough time all the way to April, depending where you are in April,
Okay.
but through March at least.
The answer is yes, as soon as we can get this
You have
right.
to have the time for at least the public hearing, right?
Yeah.
Which is early April.
Okay.
So that's, if it's too late in April, there's no validity to changing it, technically.
Well, no, I mean, it's the same bottom line. It just
Yeah.
shifts it from contract
Yeah,
obligations
it shifts it, but
to the correct
the meeting,
labor line.
the public meeting is in the beginning of April, so if it was too late in April, it wouldn't have any bearing on it.
Right.
You got something else?
No, but this overtime line, that regular, can be reduced by $60,000 because it was a redundant
Yes.
adjustment.
That's what the chief said. You good?
Yes.
Thank you, chief. And with
Nice
that,
job. Thank you. Thank you for your
this
service.
meeting is adjourned.
Thank you so much, great job.
Okay.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.